Imagine buying a house, right? And the contractor tells you the concrete foundation is going to permanently dry in exactly 16 weeks.
Right.
And whatever shape it's in on day 112, you just have to live with it forever. Like if it's crooked or if the rebar is exposed, there is no going back to fix it once those walls go up.
You're just totally stuck with it.
Exactly. You are stuck with that architecture for the next decade. And, well, that is the exact reality you are facing when you bring home a French Bulldog puppy.
Yeah, the timeline is just staggeringly compressed. I mean, we often operate under this really comforting illusion that puppyhood is this, slow, generous runway.
Oh, for sure. People think they have all the time in the world.
Right. We assume we have a full year to casually introduce rules and expose them to the neighborhood, shape their personality. But the veterinary and canine health sources we're looking at today, they just shatter that assumption entirely.
They really do.
Yeah.
So, welcome to this deep dive into the source material. Today, we are decoding this crucial, incredibly short, early developmental window of French Bulldogs. Because standard puppy advice, like the kind you find in generic paperbacks, it's not just ineffective here.
No, it's officially harmful.
Right. It completely derails new owners. By the time a Frenchie is just 4 months old, a massive amount of their adult temperament, their confidence, and their physical foundation has heavily set.
It's basically locked in.
So whether you are prepping to get a puppy or you're just fascinated by canine psychology, or maybe you just want to understand the underlying mechanics of why your neighbor's Frenchie acts the way it does, we're going to show you how hidden physical traits completely dictate these unexpected behavioral rules.
And the foundation of everything we're discussing today really starts with their skeletal and respiratory architecture. I mean, Frenchies do not mature on the same physical track as, say, a Labrador or a Border Collie.
Okay, let's unpack this because that is such a critical distinction.
It is. Their bodies are built differently at a structural level.
Yeah.
And that physical reality drives the entire behavioral timeline.
Let's look at the mechanics of that for a second, because people often assume that, well, it's a young dog, right? So it has boundless puppy energy that needs to be burned off.
Right. The classic tired dog is a good dog mentality.
Exactly. The instinct is to just clip on a leash and do this structured 45-minute march around the neighborhood to tire them out. But the sources highlight that sustained activity like that is a massive risk to their developing joints.
Yeah, we have to look at how their bones are actually growing. So Frenchies have a highly compact, very dense, and heavy build for their height.
They're like little tanks.
Exactly, little tanks.
Yeah.
And the ends of their long bones contain growth plates. Those are areas of soft, developing cartilage tissue that will eventually ossify into solid bone.
Right.
So when you force a heavy, structurally compact puppy into a long, repetitive, structured walk, you're placing immense concussive stress on that soft tissue.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it doesn't just tire them out. It can actually permanently alter how those joints develop.
But wait, I have to push back on this on behalf of anyone who has raised dogs before.
Sure.
If they are dogs, right, if they are animals with natural instincts, shouldn't they naturally just run and play until they're tired? Why do we have to act as the fun police and micromanage their natural instinct to play? It just seems counterintuitive that a dog would voluntarily play to the point of self-harm.
That is a completely logical assumption.
Okay.
But it relies on this idea that the dog's body has an internal safety margin.
Okay, what do you mean by that?
Well, a longer muzzled athletic breed generally has those built-in biological warning systems. But French Bulldogs simply do not. And the primary reason is their brachycephalic or, short-muzzled anatomy.
Right.
What's fascinating here is that their biological air conditioning system is fundamentally compromised from birth.
Because dogs don't sweat like we do, right? They rely on panting to release heat.
Exactly. They pull air rapidly over these moist, maze-like structures inside their snouts called turbinates.
Okay.
So in a long-snouted dog, there is a massive amount of surface area for that moisture to evaporate, which then cools the blood flowing through the nose, which in turn cools the rest of the body.
It's like a built-in radiator.
Precisely.
Right.
But a Frenchie's squished anatomy literally removes the surface area needed for that evaporation to occur. The biological runway is just too short.
So the internal heat builds up far faster than they can actually expel it.
Yes. The internal temperature can spike to dangerous levels in literally minutes during enthusiastic play, even on just a moderately warm day. They entirely lack the physical mechanism to dump that heat.
Wow.
And this is a lifelong limitation, meaning establishing daily routines during the cooler hours of the morning or evening that isn't an owner being overly cautious. It is a mandatory response to their anatomy.
And that biological limitation leads to a very specific behavioral scenario, the sources point out, one that requires complete paradigm shift for dog
Oh,
owners.
absolutely.
Imagine you are out for a short walk, trying to get the puppy used to the leash, and partway down the block, the dog just sits down on the pavement and flat out refuses to move.
Right. And the immediate human reaction is to project a behavioral motive onto that situation. We
Yeah.
instantly think, oh, you are being stubborn. We have to finish this loop. Come on, let's go.
Yeah, the owner gives a little tug on the leash, maybe gets frustrated, assuming it's just this battle of wills.
So the veterinary data shows us the puppy isn't being defiant at all. That sit down is very often a physiological boundary being reached.
They're literally hitting a wall.
Exactly.
Hmm.
The body is communicating a hard limit, whether it's joint fatigue or early respiratory strain. So when an owner tries to coax or, drag them to keep marching, you are forcing a structurally compromised frame to push past its biological red line.
That is so wild. You think you have a behavioral problem like a stubborn dog, but you actually just have an uncommunicated physical limit.
Exactly.
And because their physical stamina is so constrained, you only have these tiny, maybe 10 to 15-minute windows outside to expose them to the world, which means the stakes for how you use those short windows are incredibly high for their developing brain.
Yes, the physical limitation forces this hyper-focus on the quality of their mental exposure. The sources define the critical socialization window as roughly the first 3 to 4 months.
Which goes by so fast.
It really does. And during this brief period, the puppy's nervous system is just incredibly receptive to novel stimuli.
But people often misinterpret the word socialization, don't they? They think it means dumping the puppy in a chaotic dog park to wrestle with a massive pack of adult dogs.
Oh, which is a terrible idea.
Right. The literature actually defines it as strategic exposure to the human world. So novel sounds, weird surfaces like metal grates, individuals in hats or wheelchairs, umbrellas opening.
Yeah, everyday human stuff.
Because this breed is so intensely people-focused and environmentally sensitive, this early neurological mapping basically dictates their baseline adult confidence.
And this raises an important question, right? How do you walk the tightrope between healthy exposure and accidental trauma?
Yeah, how do you know?
Well, if their bodies can't handle long outings, the instinct is to just cram as much stimulus into a short window as possible. But overwhelming the dog's sensory processing during this critical phase actually bakes fear into that permanent architecture we talked about earlier.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Think of it like taking a toddler to a massive theme park.
Oh, great analogy.
Right. Having one amazing calm ride on the carousel, eating a snack, and then going home happy that builds a confident, positive association with the park.
Yeah, they want to go back.
But dragging that same toddler on 10 different loud, flashing rides until they're literally having a screaming meltdown on the pavement that isn't better exposure.
No, not at all.
You aren't building character or resilience. You are just completely overloading their nervous system.
Exactly. The goal of the carousel ride is rapid recovery.
Yeah.
You have to read the dog's body language, not some arbitrary clock or checklist.
What does that look like in practice?
If a loud truck goes by and startles the puppy, but 10 seconds later they shake it off and go back to sniffing a bush, they are in the learning zone.
Okay, they recovered.
Right. Their brain is processing the startle and categorizing it as non-lethal. But if they're cowering, plastered to the ground, or they won't even take a high-value treat, their nervous system has shifted into a panic state. And zero learning happens in panic.
Nothing good comes from pushing through that. And, a huge part of that early learning involves another high-stress area for new owners, bite inhibition.
Oh, yes. The razor-sharp puppy teeth phase.
It's brutal, but the sources are very clear that normal puppy nipping is not a sign of nascent aggression, right? It's actually a vital data-gathering process.
They're essentially mapping the neural pathways for jaw pressure. Puppies figure out how much bite force causes pain through constant feedback.
Right, they test it on their littermates first.
Exactly, and when they leave the litter, they test it on human hands. They absolutely need that data to develop what behaviorists call acquired bite inhibition.
But the way humans naturally react completely scrambles that data.
It really does.
Because we either shriek, jerk our hands away, and inadvertently turn our fingers into this high prey drive game, which just creates anxiety and hyper-arousal around hands.
Yeah, which you don't want.
Or we swing the totally opposite way and just silently endure the chewing, which deprives the dog's brain of the boundary data it needs to actually modulate its jaw strength.
Calm redirection is really the only effective input here. You remove the target of the hand and replace it with an acceptable target, like a chew toy.
Swap it out.
Right. It provides the necessary algorithmic input to the dog's brain. Yeah. Skin equals play stops. Toys equal play continues. It relies on absolute consistency rather than, emotional punishment.
So we have this deeply people-focused, highly sensitive dog. We are managing their delicate physical limits. We are curating their sensory exposure, and we are redirecting their sharp teeth.
It's a lot of management.
It is, and that intense emotional attunement to humans makes them wonderful companions, but it feeds right into the home routine. They map their sense of safety directly onto our presence, which creates a massive vulnerability for a severe separation anxiety.
Their clingy nature is why they are so beloved as companion animals, for sure. But it completely alters the approach to house training and home alone time.
How so?
Well, the general rules of house training still apply, but the sources emphasize a breed-specific necessity. The owner must be actively present and engaged during potty breaks.
Meaning you cannot just open the back door, let the puppy out into the yard, and go back to scrolling on your phone.
No, absolutely not, because their safety protocol is tethered to you. Being isolated outside often overrides their need to relieve themselves.
They just forget what they're doing.
Yeah, they forget why they are out there and just sit at the glass door staring at you, waiting to be let back into the safety zone.
So the structure has to be highly predictable. Taking them out immediately upon waking, right after a meal, right after play, and actually being in the grass with them to provide instant positive feedback.
Yes. It requires your physical presence to make the outside world feel secure enough for them to actually relax and do their business.
But that constant need for proximity leads us to probably the most debated topic for modern dog owners:
Crate training.
crate training. The sources heavily advocate for it, framing it not as locking a dog in a cage, but as teaching a vital psychological skill. They use the term comfortable independence.
That phrase is so key. Without the ability to be comfortably independent, you are setting the dog's nervous system up for catastrophic failure.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the everyday owner? I have to push back on this on behalf of the listener because a huge portion of the workforce operates from home now.
Sure.
Yeah. If I am in my house 24/7 and my puppy is incredibly affectionate and just wants to sleep on my feet while I type, forcing them into a plastic box in the other room feels inherently cruel. It feels like unnecessary confinement just for the sake of following a rule book. Is it really necessary if you're always around?
I get that. It feels cruel because we view the crate through a human psychological lens, like it's solitary confinement.
Exactly.
But if we connect this to the bigger picture, the veterinary behaviorists warn that if a Frenchie never practices being alone while their brain is in its most plastic developmental stage, you practically guarantee severe behavioral distress in adulthood. I mean, you cannot be with the dog every single second of its 15-year lifespan.
Right. Eventually you have to go to the dentist or the grocery store or the hospital.
And if the dog has never been separated from you, their wonderful affection tips into a severe panic disorder. They vocalize relentlessly, they destroy door frames trying to get out, they injure themselves.
It's full-blown panic.
Yeah. By introducing a crate gradually, paired with high-value chew toys and calm energy, you are teaching the puppy's brain how to self-soothe. You are giving them the emotional resilience to understand that brief periods of solitude are entirely safe and completely unremarkable.
It's preventative mental health care.
Exactly. You're building the coping mechanisms they will need for the rest of their lives.
But, as these physical and mental routines solidify, time marches on.
Yeah.
The soft puppy face drops, their chest widens, and they start looking like a tiny muscular tank.
They grow up fast.
They really do.
Yeah.
And this brings us to a major developmental phase where owners make their most critical error. We can call it the adolescent illusion.
The adolescent illusion. Yeah, the dog visually masquerades as an adult, which leads owners to assume the foundational concrete has completely cured. So they drop their guard.
Which is incredibly dangerous, starting with their weight management. The sources are definitive here. Excess weight is the absolute enemy of the French Bulldog.
It is the worst thing for them.
It exponentially compounds both the strain on their shallow joints and the restrictions on their airways. Owners constantly search for a magic number, asking, how much should my Frenchie weigh at 8 months?
And there's no universal weight chart for this breed because their density varies so wildly from dog to dog.
Right.
A veterinarian actually has to assess the dog's individual body condition score, feeling the ribs beneath the muzzle, checking the tuck of the waistline. The objective is slow, highly controlled growth.
Because if they grow too fast.
Yeah, bulking up rapidly while the growth plates are still soft and the airways are already narrow, it creates a perfect storm for lifelong orthopedic and respiratory collapse.
And because they are predisposed to needing frequent medical evaluation for those airways and joints, the sources weave vet visits directly into the socialization strategy, which I think is brilliant.
It's so smart.
You do not just take the dog to the clinic when they are sick or getting a painful injection.
No, you take them to the clinic lobby just to get a high-value treat from the receptionist, step on the scale, and leave.
It's a fun field trip.
Exactly. You are systematically building a positive association with a high-stress environment. A breed that requires lifelong medical monitoring cannot be terrified of the exam table. A panicked brachycephalic dog at the vet is a major medical risk just from the stress and panting alone.
That makes total sense. But even if you manage the weight perfectly and build that great association with the clinic, you still have to survive the teenage phase.
Oh, adolescence.
Right. From roughly 6 to 12 months, the brain and body undergo a massive recalibration. The sources note that old, seemingly resolved behaviors will temporarily resurface. Like the perfectly house-trained dog suddenly pees on the rug out of nowhere,
Yeah.
or the dog that loved the vacuum cleaner is suddenly terrified of it.
And owners often panic at this stage, assuming the dog has regressed or just forgotten all its training. But neurologically, the adolescent brain is undergoing a process called synaptic pruning.
Synaptic pruning.
Yeah, the brain is physically deleting neural pathways it deemed unnecessary to make the overall system more efficient. The dog is literally testing the boundaries of its environment to see which rules still apply now that it is larger and has different hormonal drives.
And this is where the major mistake happens. The owner sees a dog that looks mature, notices that the frenetic puppy energy has settled down between bursts, and decides to just scale back the structure.
They get complacent.
Exactly. They loosen the crate schedule or stop being vigilant about the potty routine.
But if you drop the structure while the brain is in its pruning phase, you signal to the dog's nervous system that those previous rules are no longer required for survival. The brain literally prunes the good habits.
Wow.
Maintaining rigid consistency during adolescence is the only way to ensure those early lessons survive the neurological rewiring.
It is exactly like when a human teenager suddenly gets tall. Just because a 14-year-old goes through a massive growth spurt, gets taller than you, and looks like an adult, doesn't mean you drop all the household rules, hand them the car keys, and assume they have perfect emotional maturity.
Right, their brain is still baking.
Their prefrontal cortex is entirely under construction. You have to maintain the boundaries while their brain catches up to their body.
The consistency is what guides them safely through the developmental turbulence. The structure you provide acts as the guardrails while their internal chemistry sorts itself out.
So, bringing all of these threads together, the overarching philosophy woven through this deep dive is that raising a French Bulldog demands discarding generic dog formulas.
Completely.
You just cannot paste the playbook for a Golden Retriever onto this breed. It requires a deep respect for their specific anatomy, understand the limitations of their compromised cooling system, and their dense, vulnerable joints. And it requires respecting their intense psychological attunement to humans, carefully pacing their exposure to the world, and actively gifting them the emotional skill of independence.
And when you respect that unique blueprint and pour that foundation correctly before the window closes, the results are just phenomenal. You raise a dog that operates with quiet confidence, trusts your guidance, and navigates a world that was not physically built for it with absolute security.
We have covered the biology and the psychology today, but there is one specific detail from the veterinary sources that offers a truly profound perspective, and it is something for you to mull over after we wrap up.
Yeah, this is a great point.
We talked today about how a Frenchie puppy sitting down on a walk is so often misread by a frustrated owner as stubbornness or defiance, when in reality the animal has simply hit a physiological boundary.
Right, the air conditioning is maxed out, the joints are strained.
It is an uncommunicated physical limit.
We constantly project malice or stubbornness onto situations where the system is simply overwhelmed.
It really makes you wonder how that dynamic plays out in the rest of our daily lives. I mean, how many behavioral issues do we encounter with our children or our partners or even our colleagues at work that are actually just uncommunicated physical or mental limits?
That's a powerful thought.
How often are we stubbornly trying to pull someone by the leash, frustrated by their lack of progress or their sudden withdrawal, when their internal nervous system is just completely maxed out? Maybe the lesson hidden in the anatomy of a French Bulldog isn't just about how to raise a puppy. Maybe it is a reminder to recognize when the people around us haven't failed us, but have simply hit a limit they do not know how to express. Keep an eye out for who might just need to sit down on the sidewalk.